From Buckingham Palace, His Majesty the King has today initiated a formal process to remove the style, titles, and honors of Prince Anne. It happened in a moment no one at the palace saw coming. Andrew, usually predictable in his guarded routines, made a decision so sudden and so personal that it sent shock waves through royal corridors. Those closest to him say the shift was months in the making, but its impact landed like a thunderclap, especially on Sarah Ferguson, who reportedly broke down the instant she heard. As insiders piece together the emotional fallout, one question rises above the rest. What pushed Andrew to this breaking point right now? Royal shock waves. The royal family and the world at large were thrown into shock when Prince Andrew, long one of the monarchy's most prominent yet controversial figures, announced he was stepping down from his most famous and historically significant title, the Duke of York. The news came suddenly, rippling through Buckingham Palace, social media, and newsrooms worldwide, leaving both insiders and the public scrambling to process the implications. Andrew, who has spent decades in the spotlight as a symbol of royal prestige, had suddenly made a choice that would redefine his public standing and trigger deep repercussions for those closest to him. In a statement, Andrew addressed the reasoning behind his decision, saying, "The continued accusations about me distract from the work of His Majesty and the royal family." He insisted that he vigorously denies the allegations that have shadowed him for years, yet the weight of public scrutiny and relentless media attention made stepping away the most prudent course. What may have started as a personal private decision immediately took on a public dimension, grabbing headlines and dominating conversations across traditional and digital media. Though Andrew retains his status as a prince, he also stepped down from the prestigious Order of the Garter, Britain's oldest and most esteemed order of chivalry. Founded in 1348, the order represents the pinnacle of royal honor, awarded only to those held in the highest regard by the crown. To resign from such a storied institution is no small gesture. It sends a clear message that the pressures and controversies surrounding him have become too significant to ignore, highlighting the stark contrast between ceremonial prestige and the harsh realities of modern public life. The decision's impact did not remain confined to Andrew alone. Its ripple effects spread rapidly throughout the palace, forcing aides, advisors, and senior royal staff to contend with the sudden upheaval. Statements had to be coordinated, public perception managed, and the delicate internal balance of the family maintained. Every word of Andrew's statement was scrutinized, analyzed, and discussed at length as commentators debated the implications for the monarchy, public trust, and the institution's image. What was intended as a personal measure quickly became a headline-grabbing moment of national and even global interest. Among those most profoundly affected was Sarah Ferguson, Andrew's former wife. For decades, Ferguson had maintained a unique and enduring connection to Andrew and the royal family, navigating a life intertwined with both privilege and public attention. With Andrew stepping away from his title, Ferguson suddenly found herself facing a personal upheaval. Stability, security, and a sense of identity long tied to her former husband's status were now in question. The emotional impact was immediate. Ferguson, who had weathered public scrutiny before, was left confronting uncertainty, loss, and the daunting task of redefining her place in a life once intertwined with royalty. The palace and the media both recognized the human dimension of this moment. Andrew's decision was more than a matter of protocol or ceremony. It carried deep emotional and practical consequences. Observers noted the ripple effect not only on Andrew's own reputation, but also on those around him, highlighting how a single personal choice could transform lives, relationships, and the perception of the monarchy itself. For Ferguson, the personal fallout was unmistakable. A life that had long been shaped by privilege, familiarity, and the shield of royal association was now forced into uncharted territory. Ultimately, Andrew's unexpected decision to give up the Duke of York title, while framed as a step to protect the monarchy, revealed the immense pressures that accompany life in the royal spotlight. Titles, honors, and centuries of tradition could not shield him or those closest to him from scrutiny, controversy, or consequence. For Sarah Ferguson in particular, it was a moment of profound upheaval, leaving her reeling and facing a future that is uncertain, challenging, and very much her own to navigate. Andrew's decision to give up his royal title didn't just shock Sarah. It left her suddenly exposed and standing alone. But how deeply has his fall from grace shaken her life? Now let's explore how Sarah Ferguson's world is turning upside down. The immediate fallout. King Charles's decision to formally strip Prince Andrew of his remaining royal privileges sent shockwaves, not just through the palace, but straight into the heart of those closest to him. The move was far more than a ceremonial adjustment or a quiet administrative act. It created a ripple effect that would profoundly disrupt the life of Sarah Ferguson, Andrew's former wife. For decades, Ferguson had lived alongside Andrew in a delicate balance of separation and connection, maintaining a lifestyle that intertwined her personal world with the rhythms of the royal family. That equilibrium was now abruptly shattered. For Sarah Ferguson, Royal Lodge was far more than a house. It had been her home since 2008, a sanctuary of comfort, privacy, and belonging, even after her divorce from Andrew. Over the years, it offered stability amid the pressures of public life, a quiet refuge she could always return to. But with Andrew stripped of his royal privileges, Ferguson now faces the shocking possibility of losing the very place that anchored her world. The palace's reclaiming of Royal Lodge forces her to confront a harsh truth. The home that once gave her security may no longer be hers. The emotional toll was immediate and profound. Ferguson, once celebrated as a charismatic and resilient figure, was forced to confront the loss of not only a physical space, but also the privileges, identity, and protection that had been tied to her association with Andrew. A home in Royal Lodge had been far more than bricks and mortar. It had been a symbol of stability and connection to the monarchy, a quiet reassurance in a life otherwise dominated by public scrutiny. Losing it was not simply a logistical problem. It was a deeply personal blow, shaking the foundations of her sense of place, security, and belonging. For decades, Ferguson had navigated her own complex relationship with public attention. Even after the divorce, her proximity to Andrew and the royal family allowed her a degree of continuity in her lifestyle and social standing. Now stripped of that connection, she faced the daunting task of reimagining her life entirely. The privileges that had softened the edges of public life, the access, recognition, and relative protection provided by her association with royalty were suddenly gone, leaving Ferguson to contend with a world in which her safety, comfort, and influence were no longer guaranteed. Beyond the personal upheaval, there was also a practical dimension. Eviction from Royal Lodge meant Ferguson would have to find new accommodation, adapt to unfamiliar surroundings, and restructure her daily life. It was not a small or simple adjustment. It represented a fundamental shift in her day-to-day reality. The security that had come with being part of the royal orbit, access to trusted staff, predictable routines, and a familiar environment was replaced with uncertainty in the pressing need to carve out a life independently. The psychological weight of this change was compounded by the public nature of the situation. Ferguson's life has long been lived in the spotlight, and her every move is scrutinized by both media and the public. Losing the protection of royal association meant navigating these pressures alone, without the quiet buffer Royal Lodge had provided. Every decision, every move, every choice about her future would now be magnified, making even the simplest aspects of daily life a challenge under the watchful eye of the world. King Charles's decision meant to protect the monarchy came with personal consequences that hit hard. For Sarah Ferguson, it wasn't just losing a title or a home, it tore apart the life she knew. Suddenly, she faced uncertainty, stripped of the comfort and protection royal privilege once offered. With her sanctuary gone, she must navigate a world full of challenges, adapt to sudden change, and find a way to rebuild her identity, strength, and life from scratch. Stripping Andrew of his royal title didn't just change his life. It cost Sarah her place at Royal Lodge and every privilege that came with it. But how long has she enjoyed the comforts of this royal home? And what happens now that she may have to face life without it? Let's find out. End of an era. For more than 30 years, Sarah Ferguson's home at Royal Lodge was far more than just a residence. It was her rare window into royal life, even after her divorce from Prince Andrew. Nestled in the peaceful grounds of Windsor, the lodge offered her stability, comfort, and the privileges few could imagine. It became a sanctuary where she could balance her public duties with private moments of normalcy. This unique home not only provided privacy, but also kept her connected to the monarchy, giving Ferguson a foothold in a world that remained largely out of reach for most. Stability Sarah Ferguson had built over decades is now slipping through her fingers. Andrew's unprecedented loss of royal titles, along with the Crown Estate reviewing her stay at Royal Lodge, had turned her once structured life upside down. The home she treasured is no longer guaranteed, and the place that symbolized comfort, continuity, and royal protection now reminds her how quickly life can change. The very walls that saw years of family milestones, personal victories, and quiet moments now hint at a profound shift, both practical and deeply emotional, in Ferguson's world. Ferguson, this change is far more than a simple relocation. Her identity has long been entwined with royal life. Her public persona, social standing, and sense of purpose have been shaped by her proximity to the monarchy. Losing access to Royal Lodge represents not merely a move from one house to another. It is a seismic disruption to the world she has known, every corner of the residence. From its private wings to its sprawling gardens, carried meaning, memories, and a connection to the rhythms of royal life. To leave it behind is to confront the reality that a chapter of her life, carefully curated and sustained for decades, has come to an unexpected and jarring end. The impact extends beyond the physical space itself. Royal Lodge provided Ferguson with a layer of protection, routine, and familiarity that few could replicate elsewhere. It was a setting that allowed her to manage her public life and personal projects with confidence, providing a buffer from relentless media scrutiny. The loss of this sanctuary introduces uncertainty into every aspect of her daily existence, from where she will live to how she will navigate her public appearances and maintain the relationships and influence she has cultivated over decades. What once felt secure and predictable is now precarious and subject to the unpredictable currents of royal protocol and public perception. Emotionally, the upheaval is profound. Ferguson must reconcile the privileges and stability she has long enjoyed with the stark reality of change, facing the challenge of redefining herself outside the protective shadow of Royal Lodge. The house was not just a home. It was a symbol of her link to an institution that shaped her identity and provided both comfort and a sense of belonging. Its imminent loss forces her to grapple with questions about independence, reinvention, and survival in a world that has always observed her every move. This transition highlights the delicate balance Ferguson has navigated throughout her life between public and private, past and present, privilege and accountability. The upcoming relocation is not simply a logistical challenge. It is a profound personal transformation. Leaving Royal Lodge signals the end of an era, the closing of a chapter that has defined her for over 30 years, and the beginning of a new uncertain journey that will demand resilience, reinvention, and courage. Within the silent halls of Royal Lodge, once alive with royal echoes, Sarah Ferguson confronts a harsh reality. Comfort, status, and security can vanish in a heartbeat. The home that once symbolized prestige now reminds her of uncertainty. With the past behind her, she must rebuild, adapt, and redefine her life entirely on her own terms. Losing Royal Lodge means losing the stability that came with it. But that's not the only reason Andrew's downfall has hit Sarah so hard. So, what else makes his decision so devastating for her? Now, let's dive into how Sarah Ferguson's world began to crumble after Andrew's royal collapse. Stripped of support, for Sarah Ferguson, the crisis sweeping through her life reaches far beyond the sudden loss of royal protection or the looming eviction from Royal Lodge. Those shocks alone would rattle anyone. But for Ferguson, they collide with problems she has been battling for decades. Long before this royal turmoil began, she had been fighting her own private storms, financial instability, unpredictable career ventures, and public scrutiny that never seemed to fade. Now, with Prince Andrew stripped of his remaining privileges and her future within the royal orbit collapsing, all of those long-standing challenges have returned with even greater force. For years, Ferguson tried to rebuild herself through various projects. She wrote children's books, launched lifestyle brands, partnered on wellness ventures, and even attempted a fresh start in American television. Some efforts shined briefly, others disappeared quietly, and none created the long-term stability she desperately needed. Her charisma opened doors, but financial missteps and inconsistent management always seemed to push them closed again. She tried repeatedly to reinvent herself, but every new chapter came with uncertainty and often with debt close behind. Still, despite these struggles, living at Royal Lodge gave her a sense of stability. It wasn't just a home. It was a symbol of belonging, a place that allowed her to maintain a thread of connection to the royal world even after her divorce. It offered privacy, comfort, and a sense of dignity that shielded her from the harsh judgments of the outside world. But now, with that sanctuary slipping away, the financial pressures she once managed to hold at arm's length are closing in once more. Without the soft cushion of royal privilege, Ferguson must confront what may be the most difficult phase of her life. The support she once relied on, the familiar environment she trusted, and the royal association that helped sustain her professional identity. All of it is either gone or at risk of disappearing. She now faces the challenge of maintaining her lifestyle, her independence, and her public reputation without the safety net that has quietly protected her for decades. What makes this moment especially heavy is that Ferguson has always been defined in the public eye by her resilience. She has endured scandals that might have destroyed others. She has weathered the roller coasters of public love and tabloid hostility. She survived a very public divorce, financial disasters, and the constant pressure of being compared to other members of the royal family. Time and time again, she fought her way back into relevance, using charm, humor, and sheer determination. But this time, the situation feels heavier, deeper, and far more personal. Losing her royal residence means losing not only her home, but also the last symbol of her long, complicated bond with the monarchy. Losing the privileges attached to Andrew means losing the final thread linking her to the institution that shaped her adult life. And losing that structure means stepping into a world where her future must be built entirely on her own terms, without a title, without royal protection, and without the quiet advantages she once enjoyed. Emotional toll of this shift is immense. Outwardly, Ferguson projects optimism and strength, but behind the scenes there is fear, uncertainty, and the daunting realization that reinvention at her age after so many attempts may be more challenging than ever before. She must now determine whether she can create a new identity that stands independently from her royal past, or whether the weight of this moment will overshadow her efforts. Sarah Ferguson is entering uncharted territory. The world is watching to see not just where she goes next, but whether she can once again rise from the chaos, rebuild her life, and reclaim her narrative. This time without the royal umbrella she once thought would always be there. With her only link to royalty gone, Sarah must now face life challenges on her own without any royal support. But can Sarah Ferguson rise again without titles, privileges, or the protection of a palace? Let's explore the details. The ultimate test. What lies ahead for Sarah Ferguson is uncertain, but her story is far from over. Even as the safety and familiarity of royal life slip away, she is not stepping into the future empty-handed. Reports indicate that she's already exploring her next steps, preparing for a very different chapter of life, one shaped not by palace privilege, but by personal choice and sheer determination. One of the most likely moves, according to royal insiders, is her transition into private accommodation. For the first time in decades, she may be settling into a home that has no royal ties, no historic corridors, and no ceremonial expectations. It will be a quieter space, perhaps smaller, perhaps farther from the spotlight, but it will be hers. And with that step comes both freedom and fear. Freedom to finally shape her life without royal expectations, and fear of losing the status and identity she has known for so long. To support herself, Ferguson is expected to lean heavily on the opportunities she knows well. Book deals, public speaking, and media appearances have always offered her a way forward, even in her darkest moments. She is charismatic, warm, and honest, qualities that audiences connect with, especially when she speaks about resilience, motherhood, and her own complicated journey. Those strengths will be essential now as she rebuilds both her income and her public image. In fact, Ferguson has a long history of rising again after storms that would have ended most public lives. She survived intense scrutiny during her marriage to Prince Andrew. She endured harsh tabloid attacks after their divorce. She faced financial ruin more than once, yet somehow found her way back with determination and a smile. She has reinvented herself as an author, a motivational speaker, a charity advocate, and a television personality. Each time the world counted her out, she surprised everyone by getting back up. But this time, the challenge feels heavier. Unlike the scandals of the past, which were often temporary setbacks, this moment represents a permanent shift. She can no longer rely on royal proximity, royal property, or royal privilege to help her steady her life. She must build a new identity that stands entirely on its own, separate from Prince Andrew, and separate from the monarchy that once defined her. And she is doing all of this at a stage of life when most people hope for rest, routine, and comfort. Reinvention is hard in your 20s. Reinvention in your 60s is a different kind of mountain. It requires courage, discipline, and a refusal to look backward at what used to be. It demands that she not only adjust to a new lifestyle, but also rewrite the story she tells the world about who she is now. Thankfully, Ferguson is not alone. Through every crisis, two figures have stood by her unwaveringly. Her daughters, Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie. Their support has been described as strong, emotional, and constant. They have offered guidance, encouragement, and even housing solutions, ensuring their mother will not face this transition without love or protection. Their bond, one of the closest in the royal family, will be essential as Ferguson navigates the unknown. Even so, the road ahead is unpredictable. She must face the reality that the identity she carried for most of her adult life, a duchess connected to one of the world's most famous families, is fading into memory. What replaces it is still unwritten. Yet, if Sarah Ferguson's past reveals anything, it is this: she is a survivor. She has stumbled, fallen, been mocked, and been dismissed, but she has also risen again and again, fueled by resilience and hope. Now she stands before the greatest test of all, proving she can create a life, a name, and a future entirely her own, and the world is watching to see whether this next chapter becomes her greatest reinvention yet. Sarah's only major support now comes from her daughters, but how much can they help her during this challenging time, and could they give her the comfort she so desperately needs? Now, let's uncover how Sarah Ferguson may rebuild her life, a new kingdom far from crown. As uncertainty settles over Sarah Ferguson's future, one possible path is beginning to take shape. One that leads far from Windsor, far from the royal estates, and far from the relentless British spotlight. Royal experts now believe that Ferguson may be preparing for a quiet but significant move to Portugal, a country where her daughter, Princess Eugenie, and son-in-law Jack Brooks Bank already live part-time. For a woman whose entire adult life has been linked to British royal circles, the idea of relocating to a calm European hideaway marks a dramatic shift. Those close to the situation say the decision is not just about finding a new home. It is a strategic retreat, one designed to give Ferguson space to rebuild, reflect, and reshape her life without the constant pressure of cameras, critics, and royal expectations. As one royal expert put it, Sarah knows that the less she and her ex-husband are in the spotlight, the better it is for their daughters and for any chance she has at a serious comeback. This move, if it happens, will place Ferguson in a villa owned by Princess Eugenie and her husband, ensuring she has a safe and supportive place to land. It won't have the grandeur of Royal Lodge, and it won't come with staff, guards, or centuries of royal history echoing through its halls. Instead, it will be a private space, modest, quiet, and far removed from everything she once knew. But for Ferguson, it might offer something she desperately needs: a breath of fresh air and a chance to start again without the weight of royal scandals dragging behind her. Meanwhile, Prince Andrew is expected to remain at Sandringham, living a far more isolated life than before. With his titles gone, his public role erased, and his movements closely watched, he now faces a lonely existence on the edges of royal life. The physical distance between him and Ferguson symbolizes something deeper, a split not of affection, but of circumstances. They have long stood side by side despite their divorce, leaning on each other through financial crisis, scandals, and public storms. But now, the pressures surrounding Andrew have grown so intense that staying close may no longer be possible or wise. For Ferguson, the move to Portugal is not just a change of scenery. It is a lesson in survival. Royal commentators consistently praise her for her generosity, warmth, and kind nature. She is someone who has always looked after others, her daughters, her charities, even Andrew. But this new chapter demands something entirely different. It requires her to look after herself, perhaps for the first time in decades, without the security of a royal home, without the symbolic protection that comes from being connected to a prince, and without the familiar comfort she has relied on for years. Ferguson must learn a new way of living. This is no small task. The world has spent decades defining her by her royal title, her marriage, and her connection to Andrew. She has been the Duchess of York, Prince Andrew's ex-wife and mother of Princesses Beatrice and Eugenie. Now she faces the challenge of creating an identity that stands alone, unshaped by palace walls or royal associations. In Portugal, she may find the space she needs to think clearly, rebuild slowly, and rediscover the parts of herself that existed long before the monarchy came into her life. The quiet lifestyle may help her focus on her creative work, deepen her bond with her daughters, and rebuild her confidence away from harsh public scrutiny. But it will also test her resilience like never before. This is a woman who has survived scandals, debts, betrayals, and relentless tabloid attacks. She has rebuilt herself more times than most public figures ever have to. Now she must do it again, but this time she must do it without a royal safety net, and the world waits to see whether Portugal becomes her escape or the beginning of her comeback story. So, what do you think about Sarah Ferguson's life outside the royal family? Could she survive without her royal privileges? We would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below.